An overflow from the loft can be fixed 90% of the time with just a £5 part. Although in this video I can show you some of the problems that arise when replacing these. This one had also leaked through the ceiling. Luckily the customer caught it in time, and because it was so warm it was drying before it was causing any damage. Here you can see it was leaking through the overflow connection. The rubber had started to perish, and instead of going fully down the overflow, it would drip out onto the ceiling. Most crucially, before you start, make sure the water shuts off. Here I use the internal stop tap, which seemed to work quite well, and then just turn on the nearest cold tap, which in this case was the kitchen tap, and that will drain down any water above. Doesn't always need to shut off fully. Then push the ball valve down. This releases any excess water that's in the pipe and drains it down through the kitchen tap. The customer had already bailed out a lot of the water here, but I decided to bail some more out to get the level down in the header tank. Not always needed to be so high. If you could please like this video and subscribe to the channel, and then you'll see more of these videos that I do week in, week out, also daily short reels. These ball valves do split from each other, so you can take them off internally, but the older they get, the worse they become. This one I decided to just take off from the outside of the tank, as it was easy enough to access. Once I'd removed the ball valve, it allowed me to access the overflow a bit easier. So I undid the nut and noticed that the washer had all perished. So I decided to just disregard that anyway. I decided to use no washer, and instead I just put silicone around both the outside and inside. Once the silicone would have gone off, it would have been solid and therefore no chance of ever leaking again. Much easier to access this once the ball valve was out the way, hence doing it before fitting the new valve. Some people would keep the old fibre washer. I'd always remove them because it's a point that's likely to leak, and this one had started to disintegrate a bit anyway and split in two as I was removing it. So I got the new valve on here, and this is where things started to take a little bit of a turn, and I came across a problem that's not one of the most common, but if you do come across it, this is the way you can sort it out. Got this all back on ready, tightened up to switch the water back on. Always better to fit the new ball before you turn the water on, so it will shut the valve off.
Leave the lofts open this weather.
Got the water all back on, ready to test the new valve and the connections that I made up in the loft. Everything was looking good until I pressed the ball valve down. This is what you always want to test. As you can see, the water started off pretty good, and then all of a sudden it came to a bit of a stop here. Now this, you can see, is discoloured, and that's due to having iron pipework on the system. So what I decided to do then was turn the water off and disconnect the valve. They only have small waterways, so bits of iron and crud coming down the pipework can block the valve. I actually did this a couple of times, turning the water on and off to try and blast it through. Not always possible and difficult when you're on your own and not got someone in the loft monitoring what's going on. I decided to just cut a section of the pipe out and see what was going on inside it. It all looked pretty clear on the bend, which is nice to see. So I decided to get my solder and poke it down through the pipe to try and clear any blockage. Push fit gets a lot of hate, but I had a push fit coupler in the van, speed fit, 25-year guarantee. So I thought I'll stick that on just in case the blockage isn't clear and I have to work down a bit further. I then wanted to flush it through again just to make sure it was working. This is where filming it actually came in extremely handy because I could see what was going on when I looked back on the camera. And as you can see, the water starts off brown and horrible, and then it soon flushes through clear, which is exactly how we want it, getting rid of any blockage that was in there, which must have been disturbed by the solder being pushed down the pipe. I then put the valve all back together. Switch the water back on for the final time. Always check the gland on the stop tap, because when these are disturbed, they are prone to having a small drip. This one did have a little drip, so I just gave it a tiny nip up. Drip was gone. Problem solved on that one. Then as you can see, the ball valve was working just as it should. They don't fill up that often, these ball valves, only when water's drained from the heating system, because this is the small feed and expansion tank. But again, because they're not used often, they are prone to failure.